I'm here for my daily dose of the Ruth Lawrence trial because I think this is a really interesting trial that you're covering. It's before a jury, so we are going to stick to the details exactly as they occur in court. Today, you were hearing about the sort of the forensic details of how Anthony Keegan and Eoin O'Connor died.
So I suppose the most substantial witness we heard from today was the then Deputy State Pathologist, Dr. Michael Curtis, who's now retired. And he gave evidence by video link, and he performed the post-mortem on Anthony Keegan. So to recap briefly, Eoin O'Connor and Anthony Keegan were killed, shot dead sometime in late April, in probably 22nd of April or sometime in that week thereafter, and the bodies weren't discovered until the 26th of May.
In 2014.
In 2014, 11 and a half years ago. So this would have been then like a month after their disappearance. He was dealing with the post-mortem. And he went through, the usual thing of going through the qualifications, and that he did 40 years as a pathologist and 11,000 post-mortems. So there's these incredible numbers that you've heard.
A lot of dead people.
Yeah, and so 15 years in this jurisdiction. And so he travelled to Navan Hospital, where we've already learned that the bodies have been taken, and that Dr. Mary Cassidy was there. She carried out the post-mortem on the other victim, Eoin O'Connor. So the jury were told we're actually going to be hearing from her tomorrow morning. As they doing these things, he was led through kind of some parts of his statement or his pathology report, and that he had been told by the guards to give him some context that what had happened. So he kind of he had what the allegations were, so to speak, and that the dead man was identified to him via the fingerprints. So we actually heard some of the evidence from one of the fingerprint guards about that later on.
And Eamon, just before we go on, the bodies were discovered. Were they buried or were they dumped on that island?
No, we heard last week when the dog handler and then the technical bureau came to Inchicup Island. They were kind of there was a mound about 4 foot, 6 foot wide, 6 foot long and about 4 foot wide, and it was covered with vegetation, with bits of trees and branches. And underneath, then they could see some plastic bags and some coal bags and plastic sheeting or tarpaulin. And I think there was a navy blue sleeping bag. One of the bodies was wrapped up in, and there was some cords and rope and tape that had been used. It was described as tape that was used to kind of, I suppose, tie up the bodies.
And this is an actual island.
And yeah, it's a small little island. It's very boggy. It's very difficult terrain. It's boggy. It's rocky. It's overgrown. Like we previously heard, the Garda Water unit, the guy driving the boat, had difficulty, but to kind of spot a space between two trees where they could land and let the dog handler get onto the island. There isn't a jetty, there isn't a slipway or anything like that. It's just, it's pretty much just wild, a little bit of wild country. Uninhabited. Yeah. I mean, these lakes in the Midlands, there's lots of these little islands. So we're back now to in kind of late May 27th, and we're in our Lourdes Hospital in Navan, where the bodies have been taken to the mortuary. And Dr. Michael Curtis, he said the bodies were in an advanced state of decomposition at this stage. And so, as I said, he was given some background. And so when he got to the bodies, there was two body bags, one inside the other. So he opened them, he observed the deceased, as he put it. There was a coal sack over the upper area. And then another coal sack around his feet as well, and then there was a kind of a blue plastic tarpaulin around the middle. And he said it was described as an elaborate ligature and a white rope that was kind of roped back or looped back around him, and there was a single strand of another piece of rope then just around the buttock and thigh region, and there was twigs and foliage stuck to the body. There was insects and other things as well, as Michael Higgins put it to him, and he replied yes to that. So some of this coal sack was kind of, it was a bit ripped. Again, the body was in an obvious state of decomposition and the loss of tissue noticeable in a number of areas. But he said there was an obvious gunshot entry wound. The skull was fractured and an extensive exit wound at the back. He talked about kind of some damage to the clothes. Well, it looked like there was kind of, as he put it, ovoid gunshot entry wounds. Kind of circular but there didn't seem to, there was an effect on, as they put it, on the t-shirt, but there was nothing corresponding on the body. So there was a hole in the t-shirt, but there wasn't in the body. He said it would have been easier if the body was fresh, in terms of judging the trajectory. But he was on video link, and to explain things, he pointed how the bullet had entered through it was the upper back of the head. So if you're listening or watching this on YouTube, I'm pointing more or less to where the pathologist, Michael Curtis, was doing it. So the entry wound was here,
behind the ear,
behind the ear, upper right side of the head, and the exit wound was then below the left ear, and there was some damage to the jaw, and there was a dislodged tooth as well. The skull was obviously shattered, as he put it. There was a long fracture across the back. He described the trajectory as slightly downwards and forwards, so it was basically through his head. It was suggested, Michael Higgins said that the brain had largely been digested, and then he said, look, that really doesn't concern us. And then there was evidence as well of a gunshot wound to the neck and catastrophic damage to the C1 and C2 vertebrae. So that's at the back of the neck. And basically, the pathologist was asked, would either of these have proved rapidly fatal, if not instantaneous? And he says, yes, it would have been. And that he would expect that, i.e. that it would have been a fatal shot, that across the brain completely. And he put it down, the cause of death was gunshot wounds to the head and neck.
And just the one gunshot wound?
No, it's two.
It's two.
There was two. So there was the one to the head and the one to the neck. And that was Anthony Keegan's. That was Anthony Keegan's cause of death then, was the gunshot wound. He concluded to that.
And so is he describing the first gunshot wound as going through the front of the head and out the back?
No, it's the back right hand side of the head, and it came out through the lower.
So sorry, there are the
under
two
the
wounds,
ear on the
but
left.
that's one bullet.
So that's one bullet with two wounds, and then there was the neck, the damage to the two vertebrae at the back as well. And there was there was very little they could work with. Patrick Gageby had a couple of questions for him. Apparently there was no shoes, and he had to check his notes or his report, and he says, yes, shoes not present. And then there was toxicology done on some material, and they found evidence that, this is Anthony Keegan's toxicology, they found evidence of morphine, methadone, zopicone. I think there was another drug mentioned, and alcohol as well. They were able to find that in his system. So, I mean, that left no doubt. I mean, this was said in Michael Higgins' opening statement that, he didn't think the jury would be particularly troubled by the fact that the men were murdered. But, obviously, Ruth Lawrence is accused of, taking part in that murder, and that's what they're trying to prove. I don't think there's any great doubt that, if you're suffering a gunshot wounds like this, that you've been murdered. So, in a sense, that is, it's a key part of the trial, obviously. So one of the other kind of witnesses that was significant as well today was the Sergeant Barry Crudden, and he did a search of St. Patrick's Cottage. This is where Ruth Lawrence and Neville Van der Westhuizen were living, and they did that search on the 28th of May. So this is the day after the post-mortem. It's probably 2 days after the bodies were discovered, and he received the exhibits from the search team. So again, there was a SIM pack for a phone, and this was produced in court, and it was shown to the jury and all the rest. And the significance of this, there's going to be other witnesses later on, or there'll be other phone evidence, quite possibly. So we don't really necessarily know the significance of this just yet. And there was coal bags were found in the house, and one of them was shown with white and red and green lettering, the word champion on it. So these are basically similar to the coal bags that were found wrapped on the body. And they also found a CV in the house with Ruth Lawrence's name on it. And again, there was a couple of these what were described as homemade machetes, and they were long bladed kind of weapons. And one of them had a handle fitted, and the others just had, I suppose, the piece of metal ready for a handle to be attached to it. And there was 3 of those that were found in an outside barn and outhouse at St. Patrick's College, and the one with the handle was found in the living room. 2 of them were quite big, were quite long, fearsome looking weapons. There was also a black latex glove, or effectively the remains of one, that was shown to the jury as well. And all that was really left was kind of the ring that would be at the bottom, like kind of a ring of rubber, I suppose. That was all that was left of this glove. Otherwise, it was just powder that's deteriorated because it's been in an evidence bag for whatever it is now, 11 and a half years. And again, there was a little bit about... there wasn't really a whole lot of cross-examining on that. Patrick Gageby just clarified, the coal bags were found in the front lounge area, and where wanted to know exactly where the machetes were found as well. Like, I suppose they were the two main witnesses before lunch. Like, we did have other witnesses. So, I mean, we're still going through, like, for instance, we had Garda Mairead Crowley, and she was the photo section from Garda headquarters, and she had taken lots of photographs, of the island, of the scene, of the bodies, of the trees and vegetation. She was also at the hospital in Navan as well, and took pictures at the post-mortem. A lot of these pictures, we don't get to see them, but a lot of them are in booklets that the jury are getting to look at. And when various witnesses go up and giving evidence, that the booklets are already there, and they're asked to refer, is this the boat you're talking to, or is this the house you're talking about? So these, I presume a lot of these pictures would have been hers. We had Garda Brendan Mulligan also took pictures on the island and around it, and prepared a book of photos for the jury, and did this. He took pictures of it was a brown fiberglass boat and a boat trailer as well, and that they were all shown to the jury as well.
What evidence has been heard in relation to the boat? And maybe before that, let's just go back over what the state's case against Ruth Lawrence is.
Yeah, well, we've heard some evidence about in terms of Ruth Lawrence's landlord gave evidence that she had asked if she could borrow a boat and an outboard motor. So that was the first mention of the boat, and I suppose in the opening statements, there was no direct reference, as far as I remember, like to a boat being used. But the bodies are found on an island, so presumably a boat was going to be used to do that.
But the state say that Anthony Keegan and Eoin O'Connor went there to collect drug debts. They believed that they were owed.
Yeah, so it was Ruth Lawrence's partner, Neville van der Westhuizen, owed €70,000 to Eoin O'Connor, and he was also in contact with a man, Jason Sims, who owed $15,000 to Eoin O'Connor, and that Jason, Sims has been described in court as, he was dealing in weed, dealing in cannabis, and that he sometimes bought from Neville van der Westhuizen. And it was basically Eoin and Anthony Keegan had travelled down on the 22nd of April, on the Tuesday, to try and collect this debt. Eoin had already been down on the Monday, we've heard. And then it was late enough on the Tuesday, like almost immediately, because we heard from members from Owen's family last week that they were in touch with him. One of his brothers was talking to him about a local football match, and couldn't contact him, to tell him the results. So kind of were concerned, really, straight away. They kind of knew where he was. They knew what he did. They knew where he was going and who he was going to see, because he had told them, look, if anything happens, this is the address I'm going to. So they were concerned. I think at 2 a.m. on the 23rd, one of the brothers was already down. Mrs. Rory O'Connor was already down in Ballyjanestuff, looking for his brother to see what he could find, and looking for their mother's car that he had used, this Ford Focus, and got himself. He was arrested himself and searched, and he expressed his concern to the guards at the time. So,
and they also told the guards at the time, they were pretty open about why they were concerned. They told at the station they went to, they said, my brother was coming to collect a drug debt.
Yeah, and so he was. Owen was reported missing in Santry by his brother Rory, and I think that was on the Wednesday, and on the Thursday, Anthony Keegan's sister, Margaret Keegan, she reported him missing to Mountjoy Station. So, like, at this stage, until you have a body, it wasn't a murder investigation, and that didn't occur. It didn't become a murder investigation until the 26th of May, when the bodies were found on Inchicup Island, about a couple of days or a week nearly after a fisherman had basically caught the really bad odour coming off the island and alerted the guards to it.
Tell me a little bit about that, because that you were talking about that on Friday when I wasn't here, so...
It's all about me. Yeah, there was a fisherman called Pat Smith and a friend of his were out on Loch Sheelan doing their fishing, I guess. The weather was, we've heard from another witness that the weather was quite nice at the time, but they were stopping to make a cup of tea and kind of went leeward, I suppose, or inshore side of the island to avoid the wind. So the wind, as it was coming over the island or through the island and straight into their faces, and he got a strong odour. And as he told, a Garda who then gave evidence that when he was passing this information on, he said that Pat Smith, had told him that because he'd previously worked as a butcher, he knew it was rotting flesh, but it wasn't animal flesh. And so, it was given kind of obviously stressing the level of importance that he attached to this. And then it was after that, then we had the dog handler, I think it was Garda Conroy, and D for Dog, as he called him. It was in the light moments of the trial when he was explaining he didn't have much imagination when it came to naming dogs. So D4 was the name of the dog, who basically, there were a couple of seconds on the island, and he indicated, now, the Garda boat handler, had said, even before they got to the island, blue bottles were quite obvious, and they were, one of the guards, when they were kind of uncovering the twigs, they could see a hole in some of the covering, and blue bottles are coming out of that. So they kind of, I think they all instinctively knew what they were dealing with, and it was quickly sealed off and became a crime scene. And then the technical people came down, and they got the bodies off the island and to Navan, which is where Michael Curtis then was carrying out his post-mortems.
Are the families in court to listen to this? Because it's pretty hard.
There are members of both sides, I believe. Yeah, but I mean, but while we've had Eoin Keegan's partner and two of his brothers have given evidence, and we have Anthony Keegan's sister gave evidence as well. But they're the only members of the family that have been in court and given evidence to the.
And they remain in place for the trial to hear the details of the trial?
Yeah, I presume there are. Yeah, look, there would be family members there.
Yeah.
I mean, but the jury aren't necessarily going to. They're looking at people in court. They're not going to know who's who.
Exactly. And there's a kind of growing interest in it, I think.
Well, it's kind of unusual in a sense that it kind of comes off as a gangland murder, but when you're hearing evidence about from Peter van de Westhuizen, who's the father of Neville, that his son was knocking on his door at 7:00 with his nervous pal Jason, and looking for 100 quid for petrol money and only being able to give him 50, and then after he meets the guards in Navan, he comes back and borrows another tenner. So so in one sense you're saying this is a gangland attacking, and then it's quite a. It's quite run of the mill, I suppose, in one sense, but it's a different. I mean, Ruth Lawrence. It's like the piece I wrote online, kind of to sum up the week. I mean, she's the person on trial. Neville van de Westhuizen isn't on trial, nor is anyone else. And she hasn't really. We haven't heard much about her. We got a certain amount about Eoin O'Connor. That he'd married two daughters, he was in a relationship and with two daughters. He'd been to Smith's toy store that day. They'd had a birthday cake for one of the daughters, and then he set off on the Tuesday. And as his partner said, she'd never seen him again from that day on. And we actually saw that today as well. There was a kind of a montage of CCTV that was shown to the jury. And it was from different aspects of it. And one of them was kind of showing Eoin O'Connor going into the Smith's toy store and leaving and walking down Jervis Street and walking down Parnell Street. And then, there was some footage of this black Ford Focus going through the two toll gates on the M3. And the state's contention is that was Eoin O'Connor driving and Anthony Keegan in it. So these were shown to the jury. There was also various bits and various little clips and CCTV of a dark coloured hatchback like a Ford Focus and a white van similar to the one driven by Van der Westhuizen. They were shown to the jury as well. And then it was kind of unusual because the day finished off then. It was played again. It's about 7 minutes of this montage, and it was played without the guard kind of giving any kind of explanation or commentary. And it was kind of it was very much just explaining. Look, this is what's contended by the state.
And why was it played a second time? Did the jury ask for that?
No, Michael O'Higgins said, "Look, we'll just play it again without any commentary." So we sat in absolute silence the whole court for 7 minutes as this went through, and you're looking at I suppose the last footage of Eoin O'Connor and a little bit of Anthony Keegan before they disappeared, and then kind of these kind of I suppose slightly blurry images of vehicles moving around Ballyjames stuff. One of them was from the camera on the Garda station, another from a pharmacy that was had cameras that captured part of the road. From an Indian restaurant, from a centrist shop. So all of these were kind of used, and there's timings on it, and so it's given an idea of the
They're like flashes
the
of images that are either already form part of the evidence or which will form part of the evidence. The moving of vehicles, the last moments of the two, Anthony Keegan and Eoin O'Connor, when they're alive, the last images captured of them, I suppose, etc.
Yeah,
and it's quite a long quite a long piece of video, 7 minutes.
Well, they actually, Michael O'Higgins explained this to the jury. He said, look, like it's ubiquitous. There's CCTV everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was this particular guard, like he was in charge of the CCTV, but basically they as Michael O'Higgins put it, 99% of it you don't need. So this was boiled down. Like, so, I mean, there was obviously hundreds of hours, or if not thousands of hours of CCTV in different places. And these were the relevant clips that came down to a kind of a 7-minute montage.
So what you know about tomorrow is you have former state pathologist Mary Cassidy giving her evidence in relation to the post-mortem she conducted. And after that, more witnesses will be.
Yeah, there will be. There was 2 other witnesses today, though, that were, I think, of interest that came after lunch.
Right.
So these are 2 detectives that were basically, they were part of the Santry team doing the missing persons investigation at the time. And one of them, Gerard Malarkey, he spoke about, like, they were tasked to go down to Navan. They had contacted both Neville Van de Vestes and Jay Sims. Now, I have to say, Jason Sims, his name is pronounced Sims and Symes by either side,
Okay.
So if I switch between the 2, forgive me for that. But these men were both contacted by phone. They agreed to meet them halfway between Dublin and Cavan, which was Navan. So they met on April the 24th. Now, he describes Jason Sims. He was cautioned and asked about his contact with Eoin O'Connor. He appeared to be quite nervous at all times during his interactions with this guard. And at the end of the questioning, kind of notes were read over. They agreed it was correct. He signed the written memo. Afterwards, he said there was a discussion about his mobile phone, and he mentioned that his daughter Stacey had it with him, and she was waiting for him in a nearby McDonald's. And so both Gerard Malarkey and a colleague, John Griffin, I think it is, they went over to McDonald's. They told them who they were, why they were there. They asked them to put the phones on the table, and then advised them that they were seizing them. Now he was dealing. This Gerard Malarkey was dealing mostly with Stacey Sims, and he did say, though, Ruth Lawrence appeared to be rooting in her bag. Anyway, he seized the phones. So there's 4 phones seized. He put them in an evidence bag,
and
put them on airplane mode.
And were the 2 women then in the McDonald's?
The 2 women were in the McDonald's, and we heard then from the next witness, John Griffin, that they were, when they came in, they were sitting face to face in the McDonald's. Again, like he explained that they introduced themselves, and and basically that they had wanted to get the phone because Jason had said Stacey had his phone, so they wanted to get that phone. He could see Ruth Lawrence, like, and she had her hand in her handbag, and he said, as he put it, he could see her fiddling around with the mobile, and to me it looked like she was trying to open the back of the phone to remove the SIM. Now, it's important to say in the cross-examination, Patrick Gageby said, he said, are you surmising? That's surmising on your part. And he said, no, she was at the handbag before we asked them for it. And there was also, Patrick Gageby asked both guards, he said, look, there was a question put to Jason, like, why would a lad like Eoin O'Connor bring muscle down to get money from you? And was that a question put by you? He says to Detective Griffin. He says, yeah. And this was a question that, the question that had been put was that Jason Sims had got a kilo of cannabis and given it to someone else, and he'd lost it. And was this what this was all about? Now, we didn't necessarily hear any of much else about the statement. This came up in cross-examination. And that was the kind of, I suppose, the most interesting kind of evidence that we heard today in terms of that.
So in regards to the kilo of cannabis, it's Griffin, Detective Griffin, that is asked.
Yeah.
Did he put it to Sims that...
Yeah. And he said, look, and he was asked, was there evidence for this? And he said, look, it's just a line of questioning. It was the way he put it. So, a guard can ask, I guess, what they like, of someone. They don't have to give any evidence. Now, at this stage, like, there was, and Mr. Gageby was very kind of, he was asked both officers as well, like, was there any formal notification to the women that they were requisitioning their phones? And it was explained they were not. So he was kind of making, he was saying, he was asking to say, so the women gave you the 4 phones willingly, but the guards agreed, yes, that they had done so.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it until tomorrow. Eamon, thanks very much.
Always a pleasure, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.